Hello, powerful people, and welcome back to the Power at Work blog for this blogcast. My name's Seth Harris. I'm a senior fellow at the Burns Center for Social Change, and you are in this blogcast. If you're a political junkie like I am, this blogcast is going to be like a treat, like a confection, like a little candy. Like, if you go to a fancy restaurant, at the end of the meal, they bring out those little, very small, rich cookies, the petit fours, right? It's going to be like that. It's going to be like when your grandmother or grandfather reached into their pocket and slipped you a little something and said, "Don't tell your mother, kid. Don't tell your mother I gave you that." It's going to be that delicious, that tasty. And the reason is we're talking to three National Union political directors today about the 2024 election. Our guests are Katrina Mendiola, who is the National Political Director of the National Education Association, which is the largest union in the United States. Russ Breckenride, who's the National Political Director of the UA, the United Association of Plumbers and Pipefitters. And we spoke with Susan Valentine, who's the National Political Director of Unite Here, which we're going to talk about a little bit when we get to labor news. And what you're going to get out of this blogcast is insight into how these unions persuade and mobilize their members for these elections, but also how they mobilize their members outside the union to support endorsed candidates. Very important stuff. There's an inside game and there's an outside game, and we're going to talk about both of them during this blogcast. And I also turned the political directors into pundits, right? We want to know what's going to happen. And so I sort of forced them to make predictions about how the elections are going to turn out in 2024, and we're going to hold them accountable. I warned them. I didn't threaten them. I warned them that we were going to have them back and hold them accountable for their predictions. So maybe we'll see where we are in 6 months or even in a year, because it's 1 year until Election Day. The reason we're doing this blogcast today is it is 1 year from today until Election Day 2024. It's actually Election Day right now in a number of states, including our neighboring state of Virginia. So interesting to see how those off-year elections happen. They're often indicators of what's going to happen in the presidential year elections or in the midterm congressional elections. So it'll be interesting to see how those turn out. But we really focused our attention on the 2024 election. So we will get to our blogcast in a minute. But first, here's a little bit of labor news. And let me also say, my colleagues have been yelling at me that this segment may be a little bit too long, right? But there's a mountain of labor news. There's a huge amount of labor news right now in our country. So let me get right to it and try and do it a little bit more quickly. I'll start with the SAG-AFTRA strike against the Hollywood studios. That began back in July. The studios and their CEOs have now made what they are calling a last, best, and final offer to the union. Last, best, and final is a term of art in labor law. When an employer makes a last, best, and final offer, they are signaling three things to the union, and this is authorized by labor law. The first thing is, this is it. This is the last offer you're going to get from us. Second is that there is an impasse in the negotiations, and the only way to show that we're going to be able to make a deal is for you to accept this last, best, and final offer. And then third, that the employer will impose the last, best, and final offer as a contract on the union if they do not accept it. Now, of course, SAG-AFTRA has options here. They can accept the offer, right? They can say, hey, this is what we wanted, and we're going to say yes to it. I don't know if it's what they wanted. They have to talk with their members about that. Only they can know. Only the leadership, their bargaining committee, and the membership can say whether this last, best, and final offer is what the union was willing to accept. If it's not, they can make a counter offer, right? They could say, well, this is best and final, but it ain't last. We don't think this is your last offer. We'll make a counter offer. Here's what you need in order to get a deal. And here's what you need to do in order to get to a deal. Or they could continue the strike and say, no, this is unacceptable to us. Even if you impose the final offer, it's not acceptable to us. It appears that there has been some, I'm not really sure what the right word is, let's say discussion, maybe it's turmoil within the union about the content of the strike. The length of the strike certainly is upsetting to some folks. It's possible that the studios think there is dissension in the ranks and they can split the membership by making this last best and final offer. It may also be that the union is simply won, that this last best and final offer is what the union can accept victory on. But again, we don't know that. We're going to have to wait to see how SAG-AFTRA responds. We're recording this Monday, November 6th in the morning. It's possible that SAG-AFTRA will have responded to that counteroffer or that last best and final offer before you see this, but they have said that they're going to take a few days to decide what they're going to do. Interesting to see how that comes out. On another front, we still don't know whether or not the culinary workers and bartenders of Unite Here will go out on strike against the Las Vegas casino hotels. The workers at the Detroit casino hotels are already out on strike. In this blogcast, I talked about those Las Vegas locals with Susan from Unite Here. They're immensely politically powerful, tremendously politically powerful. But, this is a test of their economic power. Now, they have shown a lot of economic power. And, I've talked before about what it is that the unions who are effectively striking or effectively threatening strikes during this period have that makes it possible for them to do that. One is some kind of barrier to entry into the occupation, a skills requirement, a credential, licensing, some kind of experience or knowledge that's needed, or tremendous density, huge density. Like it was inconceivable that UPS would be able to replace 330,000 UPS truck drivers, just out of the question, particularly in tight labor markets like those that we have now. I think you could probably say the same thing about the 60,000 members of the culinary and bartenders unions of Unite Here in Las Vegas. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they are able to effectively threaten a strike or actually effectively go out on strike if that's what they decide to do. They're an activist union. And they've been able to win some really good contracts in the past. Also, there's a lot of anger in the union coming out of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, where those members really felt they put it on the line. Las Vegas was open a lot earlier than a lot of other entertainment venues in the United States. So they took a lot of risks, and they want to be treated fairly as a result of that. Also, they had, as I mentioned, they've had massive unemployment in that union during the pandemic recession. So there's a lot of anger and frustration. There have also been some business model changes that Susan mentions during this blogcast, that where the hotels have reduced some jobs, particularly in housekeeping, and that's upsetting to a lot of the union's members. So we'll have to see if that means that they're going to go out on strike. Of course, there's always a hope that they'll get an excellent contract either way. So we'll see what happens. And finally, and this is, for those of you who are regular viewers know this is very personal to me, Cornell University's graduate workers will vote this week on whether they will be represented by the UE, which is one of the unions that's organizing all over the United States on campuses. This is the culmination at Cornell of a multi-year organizing campaign among the graduate workers. Cornell is my alma mater, and I had a lot of my formative labor experiences on campus when I was a student. So I'm excited to see the graduate workers have an opportunity to vote to be represented by a union. You know very well that unions who are running elections on college campuses have been winning with gaudy numbers. I mean, 93%, 94%, particularly among graduate workers. The elections haven't necessarily been that overwhelming, or the election results have not been that overwhelming necessarily among faculty and other units, but boy, oh boy, on the graduate workers, they're winning in large numbers. I don't know if the Cornell grad students will win with those kinds of numbers. It's possible. Obviously, the UE thinks that they're going to win, or they wouldn't have pushed a petition for and pushed to have this election right now. They think they're going to win. I certainly hope they do, and I'd like to see those workers have a union. It's a very large unit, and we'd like to see them continue to grow. We have a blogcast about union organizing in higher education that's going to be coming up soon. Subscribe to the blog so we can keep you updated about terrific content like that. The blogcast on higher education organizing is coming in the next couple of weeks, but let us keep you updated so you don't miss out on any of this terrific content. So on the front page of the blog, just give us your your name, your email address, your affiliation, and we will add you to our subscription list and we will keep you updated. Okay, that's it for labor news. Now, on to our blogcast with the National Union Political Directors and our discussion about the 2024 election. Enjoy. So let me start by thanking all of you for being here today. I am entirely too excited for this blogcast. It's so fitting that we're recording this on Halloween because I am like a kid with a bag full of Halloween candy. I would rather, I would rather talk politics and labor politics than just about, and maybe the New York Knicks is the one thing I'd rather talk about. But so I'm very excited, and I, having worked with all of you, I know that you're going to add so much to this conversation. So if I seem a little too excited, it's because I am. So really appreciate your being here today. So my experience with one of the reasons we wanted to have labor political directors on 1 year out from the 2024 election is I know that you all are not just experts about unions and experts about politics, but experts about the role of unions in politics, which is something I think our audience is really eager to learn about. And a lot of it they don't see. They may see it in their own union, but they don't actually get to see it. So I want to pull back the curtain a little bit and give you a chance to talk about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so what I really want to do is talk about two roles that unions play in electoral politics. One is what I think of as sort of an outward facing role, which is unions helping campaigns to persuade and turn out general election voters or general public voters, right? Folks who are not necessarily union members, and you're helping the campaigns to communicate with them and win them over and then get them out to vote. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're going to focus a lot of the conversation on what I think of as the inward facing role. And that is you engaging with your members about their issues, their votes, their willingness to get out and vote, which is one of the most, I think, interesting and important parts of labor politics or unions in politics. So, but let's start with the outward facing role. And Katrina, I want to start with you. So, do you think that an endorsement from the NEA helps candidates with respect to voter persuasion, with respect to voter turnout, or is your endorsement more valuable because it brings money, volunteers, organizational support? Because you're endlessly barraged by candidates who are desperate to get your endorsement. What do they think they're getting when they do that?
Well, it's sort of both and. Of course, the endorsement comes with, a contribution and, publicizing that to the general public. But it also gives our members a vehicle and a way to talk to fellow members, but also voters. Because it's not so much the NEA label, the NEA endorsement that may mean something to a voter. What will mean something to them is when a teacher they know, an educator they know, talks to them about the candidate that has been endorsed. And so in doing the endorsements, it opens up the avenue for our members to, one, understand who we're supporting and then why, and then enable them to talk to people in their lives.
And so it's sort of a unique role, maybe not unique because there are some other professions that fit there, but I'm a child of teachers. Actually, one of them was
Same.
an NEA member. Yeah. So I say this with an immense amount of pride. Teachers really have a unique place in our communities. Maybe firefighters, maybe cops also fit that role to some extent, maybe doctors in some contexts. So you're sort of using that, you're deploying that in the political context. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I would add nurses to the list that you just listed off, Seth. Nurses are also consistently viewed as trusted messengers, but our members vote. It's just the nature of who they are. I think in 2020, about 90% of our members voted. So we view our job and our work with our members is to get them to talk to the public. Just exactly that.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And speaking of talking to the public, Susie, you represent a bunch of bartenders, which may be the other profession that has a lot of influence. But I want to talk to you about, people in the political world know this, but I'm not sure a lot of people out of the political world do know this. But the Unite Here political operation in the state of Nevada,
Mhm.
which is an early primary state, and I think is sometimes viewed as a swing state in congressional elections, in gubernatorial elections. It's the stuff of legends.
Mhm.
And that's because of Local 226, which is the culinary workers and the bartenders in the casinos in Las Vegas. And they're immensely powerful, immensely powerful. So, okay, so give us a little bit of visibility
Yeah.
into what it is, other than the influence of bartenders with their,
Right.
their prominence in the community.
Yeah.
What is it that makes Local 226 and the whole Unite Here operation in Nevada so powerful and important?
Yeah. The bartenders are local 165. So it's
Oh,
226
165.
is the
Sorry. Oh my
culinary
goodness.
and the
See,
bartenders are 165. I have to do
oh,
that.
I'm never going to get a drink in Vegas now. I'm done. I'm
I
done in
have to give
Vegas.
them their due. But no, I think you're absolutely right about the gift of the gab from the bartenders. But to be honest, probably a good fourth of the folks who do the door knocking in Vegas are actually our housekeepers
Mm,
because, the bartenders make a lot of tips. So it's harder for them to decide to take months off. So we run a very different kind of program, I think, than a lot of other unions. We do a lot of canvassing independent expenditure operations, right? So, it's hard for teachers to get off work to go knock a bunch of doors, but they have opportunities, like Katrina was saying, to talk to the public and talk about why to vote. Our folks we take out of work and literally go knock general public doors. And so we always talk about talking to our members and communities. And I think the other thing that's a little bit different with us is that we have a lot of members who have who may not be citizens, right? They may have TPS, temporary protected status, or have work permits but not be citizens. So we have less opportunity maybe to have 90% voting records, but we have a lot of opportunity to actually get out there and talk to folks in our communities, and that's really what the power of the culinary union and the bartenders is in Vegas. Is that we've over the years expanded that to, I think last year it might have been about 500 people doing those doors. Yeah, at the height of the operation. It's also a state with early voting and a state with mail voting. So there's a lot of opportunities to move people to the polls. And it's also a state where there's about 2 million voters, and we have 50 plus thousand members. So we can
yeah.
really, it's a small state. It is a swing state. If anyone tells you different, if anyone says it's safely blue, they're not right. That only happens because we literally do get out year after, every 2 years over there. But it is it is a swing state to us, but it's that work of doing, we can really move the needle, right? Because we're big, the state's pretty small, and we can actually make an impact that really matters, right? In these races. Whereas if you're dealing with something like Florida and you've got the size of that state, it takes a lot to swing 1 point in Florida. You can swing you can swing a couple points. Last year, Cortez Masto won by 8,000 votes.
Mm.
We delivered well more than that through our operation. So I think that's the reason for culinary's, outsized importance.
So have you been able, maybe you haven't been able to recreate the impact, but have you been able to recreate the model in other places in the country? Because Unite Here has members all over the United States. Anywhere there's a
Yeah,
hotel or a bunch of hotels, you're going to find Unite Here
yeah.
members, but also laundries and others. So do you recreate the model, and does it have maybe more of a localized impact in places?
Yeah, we've recreated the model. I think our operation in Arizona is, really robust and has been established for a few years. I think really kind of got its sea legs maybe in 2018. And then, both last year and in 2020, we did Pennsylvania, because we can make a big impact in Philadelphia. But these impacts they're very locally, I wouldn't say that it's a more local impact. I'd say they're more locally varied, right? So you can make a real impact in a city like Philadelphia, which is so overwhelmingly Democratic, that it can move the needle in the state. And, when during the Biden election, right, we were all waiting on the count in Pennsylvania, right? So we were very glad we were there. And then, the other big place that we really recreated our model was the last two Georgia Senate runoffs. So that we had 2 years in a row, 2 cycles in a row, we had runoffs in Georgia. And we sent everybody from everywhere else to go supplement our Georgia operation. Our local in Georgia is relatively small, but we sent, when people were done in Nevada and Pennsylvania, they went down to Georgia and delivered our model there. So we have been able to expand the model.
And very, very successfully in partnership with the labor movement and a lot of other folks.
That's right.
In Georgia.
Yes, we could not do any of that without others.
Yeah, no question. So the reason we wanted the three of you together is because you represent very different populations of workers.
Yeah.
And Russ, your members very different from Katrina's members and Susan's members, different communities. They're working with different kinds of folks. So when you think about helping a candidate to influence or turn out voters, how do you think about who your members are and who it is that they're communicating with? Is your union organizing its political program and mobilizing its members with those networks in mind for that outward facing role?
Well, really, Seth, we do a little bit of everything. The good thing with the members we represent, we represent construction workers in the pipeline industry, and we are your T-ball coaches. We're the members of your church. We are the fabric of the community. So when our members talk to other members in the community and talk about politics and talk about elections, I think that there is a certain level of credibility there. I don't know if you guys have heard, but unions are sort of enjoying a bit of a moment right now. We're very popular.
Can I just say, I haven't heard very much about it.
Feels kind of nice, 67% of the general public support the labor movement right now. It's the highest level since 1970. So, I think that we all and the entire labor movement do have a critical role to play in elections, and our endorsement does matter. I think when it comes to our membership, particularly around kitchen table topics for working families, we have a unique space in the fact that the president has repeatedly spoken about the importance of unions, and his main message for re-election is an economic message, one built on giving everyone a fair shot, creating jobs, building infrastructure. And I think when we do our job of delivering that message, we're not only talking to our members, we're talking to the general public. So that's something that, we do outwardly facing, but also with membership. And I think between both of those avenues, we really have a significant impact on the election.
Yeah. So do you train your members in messaging or help your members to understand what you want them to carry out to their faith institutions, to their community groups, so that they can talk about politics in a way that's consistent with the UA's larger message?
Yeah, we're always talking to our membership about politics, whether it be legislative victories, whether it be federal investments in infrastructure. We think it's critical to make sure that, sometimes we get lost in the Beltway buffer zone, right? We think all this great things that we're doing is resonating out to the general public, out among voters, but it doesn't always do that. And if it does, it may be presented with a biasness that isn't exactly accurate. So we are always talking to our membership and doing our best to kind of break through the noise and make sure they know truly the good things that President Biden has done and Congress as well, especially when it comes to construction jobs and infrastructure.
Yeah, I have these crazy conversations with people about, oh, nobody reads a newspaper anymore. Nobody ever looks at the mainstream media. And I said, except for new union newspapers, right? The one thing that union members can be trusted to read is whether it's online or whether they get it in physical form. My old union still has a physical newspaper. They're reading that newspaper mostly because they want to find out who died, but also because, right, they also they want to hear what their president has to say. They want to hear about news about their industry. They may want to know where the jobs are going to be. And those vehicles really, really matter in those communities. So maybe a family member sees it, an adult kid sees it, an adult family member, adult child of a union member gets to see it. It can really move votes. And a lot of folks in politics sort of don't get that, is that really is a vehicle that works, right? You don't have to use Twitter, which most of those folks are not necessarily on. All right, so I want to turn to the inward facing political role now. Susie, I want to start with you. So, and I particularly want to talk about what issues motivate your members to both to get out and vote, but also decide how they're going to vote. And I'm really interested in your sense of, are they voting on union issues, or are they just like other voters, that they're voting on reproductive rights, they're voting on immigration policy, or they're voting on inflation or the economy as a whole? What's your sense of that?
I mean, I would say that our members are people too. They have all the and they do experience Facebook and TV ads. I mean, oftentimes our members can suffer from some of the same being turned off by some political conversations, right? But I think of it in a couple different layers, because I'm also thinking about what would drive them to take that leave of absence and go knock those doors, right? And then when we're doing the canvassing operation, we're motivating people every day to stay out when it's cold and it's dark. And, we do 8-hour shifts of door knocking every day. So we spend a lot of time thinking about what motivates our members, and them standing up at the front of the room and telling stories about what was meaningful to them. And so I would say it's a real mix of things. I definitely think that economics matter 100%. Our folks, even if they're have great benefits and pensions and wages from our contracts, that doesn't mean every single person in their family has that. And so they are facing, and frequently our members end up being the people who take in that adult kid, adult child, right? Or help out other family members because they do have a pretty stable job. So those economic issues that everybody feels super important, but also I think they do ask themselves the question, like Russ was saying, when it comes to the president, for example, what has he done to help our union? What has he done to grow the union movement? It's meaningful to people that he says the word union over and over. You can't discount that. And then the other thing I would say is, just over the course of the last year and a half, we definitely have felt the Dobbs effect like everyone else.
Dobbs meaning the decision by the Supreme Court that reversed Roe versus Wade and allowed states to illegalize reproductive health choices.
That's right. And I think that our members are, our union is majority women. And I think that a lot of our members see reproductive rights actually as an economic issue. So if they were to have an unplanned pregnancy, how would that affect their whole family and their whole family's economic well-being? So a lot of stories that folks were telling, right now we're involved in the Virginia elections, and that's a massive issue down there. We were involved in a primary down there on that same issue. And it's something that really does drive our members, is that ability to have that right to choose, and that for their daughters. And a lot of folks talk about those kinds of things. So immigration, you mentioned also, definitely is something that people think about, because we do have a lot of members who are immigrants.
Yeah, no question about it. So Katrina, you're the NEA is not. The NEA is the largest union in the United States. I should have started by saying that. I mean, that's a not unimportant factor. You have 3.2 million members now.
Yep.
Do I have that right?
Yep, we're hovering around 3. Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but yep.
That's a whole lot of people. So the NEA is not just a leading voice on labor issues; it's also one of the leading voices in support of public education. Right? As we were talking about before we started, the NEA is overwhelmingly public school teachers or public school paraprofessionals. And I know your members, like my folks and like other teachers, really care about education issues. So when you're talking to your members, are you leading with education? Are you leading with union? Are you leading with other issues? And also, I'm hoping you'll weave into your answer talking a little bit about how much you really know about your members. I think a lot of people outside the labor movement don't know how much you know about what your members think.
Yeah, no. So, first of all, we always start every message with our members saying that Joe Biden is the most pro public education, pro labor president we've had in our lifetimes. So that is the first thing that we say, always. But you have to keep in mind that, yes, education, obviously by far a top priority for our members, but every classroom is a microcosm of what's happening in that community. So every issue that that community is dealing with, every issue that is happening in that child's home comes to school. So many of our members will often talk about issues that have nothing to do directly with education, but they might have to do with food insecurity. They have to do with child poverty issues. They have to deal with immigration. They have to deal with all of these issues because they are at their doorstep and in their classrooms every day. So, because of that, there really isn't any issue that I would say our members would take off the table, only because, like I said, it shows up in their lives on the daily basis.
How do you, given that, how does the union structure its conversations with your members in order to persuade and also motivate them to get out and volunteer, but also to get out and vote?
Yep. Well, like I said, our members by and large vote. And when they vote, they by and large vote for the candidates that we endorse. So our persuasion programs are actually fairly small. The bulk of our program, like I said before, is getting our members to turn out and volunteer for campaigns or talk to the public directly. We have started running our own summer canvassing program with our members. So they go door to door as part of what becomes their summer job. We all know a lot of teachers have to take summer jobs. So we become their summer job, and they knock doors and they talk to the public. And, we often point to the difference they can make, right? The impact they can have. As we've said before, educators are some of the most powerful messengers in any community. So we tell them that and make sure that they are aware of that. And then we don't really arm them with messages so much as we encourage them to go out there and tell their own stories. To talk to the voters face to face about something the Biden administration has done or something a candidate they are supporting has done that affected their lives or their student lives directly. And that's the kind of thing, some of our members will have 10-minute conversations at the door with a voter because they're starting to engage in that level of conversation rather than just like, here's the line I'm giving you today about X candidate. So that is really what we encourage them to do more than anything else, is like, we'll give them some basic guidelines and a basic skeleton, but really go out there and tell your story and talk about what you see in your classrooms and how that's impacting the community.
That must be amazingly effective. Imagine having a teacher at your door talking about a personal story that a candidate has been involved in some meaningful way. That sounds amazingly effective. Russ, let me turn to you, and I'm going to hit you with a question that I know you see coming all the way down Route 95. So the UA has a sizable number of Republican members. Every union has some Republican members. People think of the labor movement as monolithic, but it is not. It's extremely diverse. You have non-voters, you have Democrats, you have Republicans. My cousin, who was a member of the UA, was a member in New York State of the Conservative Party, which is not like, it's not like a fake, it's a real Conservative Party. The Republicans were too liberal for them, so they split off. He was actually a leader in the local Conservative Party. But man, if you talk union with that guy, he would have absolutely gone to war in support of his union. He could not have been a more vigorous union supporter. So people forget that you can be politically conservative and yet be a good union member, an activist union member. So you have Republican members, you have members who voted for President Trump, some members who voted for President Biden. How do you communicate with the Trump voters, the other Republican voters that you have in your membership, when the UA, at least at the national level, and I think also at the congressional level, largely but not exclusively is endorsing Democrats?
Well, thanks for that question, Seth. For the most part, we work with both parties. We're a bipartisan organization. We endorse Republicans, we endorse Democrats. We sort of support candidates who support our issues. And I think the fact that we are bipartisan gives us a little bit more credibility with some of our more conservative members, because they do see us not being monolithic, not only working with the Democratic Party. I think the important thing to do when talking to more conservative members is really to focus on the issues. Don't get into Democrat versus Republican, red states versus blue states. Really focus on the issues and where the candidates stand on some of the issues that are important to our union and our membership. With President Biden, obviously he has been one of the most pro-union presidents since FDR. He promised us during the campaign that he would pass an infrastructure bill. He passed 3 big ones that are putting our members to work. So when it comes to this election, there is a stark contrast between what President Biden was able to deliver when it comes to jobs and infrastructure and what Donald Trump promised yet failed to deliver on. Now there is a clear record. Previously, Trump was sort of an unknown. People may have taken him at his word, but now we have a clear standard to show that he didn't deliver on anything. Joe Biden did. So our focus will be on telling that story, comparing and contrasting the issues, not really getting into the candidates per se, but once you tell that story, it's fairly evident who has our membership's best interests at heart, who delivered on their promises, and really how they should vote.
Yeah, so again, I mentioned this before, all of your organizations are both polling your members and also doing leader member conversations, member conversations. And so you have a pretty good understanding, maybe a great understanding of what your members are thinking. So I want to pick up on what you just said, Russ. I'm not asking you to disclose any secrets, although feel free if you'd like. I'm happy to make news. I don't mind making news. I had a union president on who announced what the goal for organizing for his union was on this Blogcast. It's like, I haven't ever heard that before. Made a little bit of news, got covered a little bit. But anyway, so you're polling, Russ, and you're having conversations. Does that strategy work? Does it move voters who are, their families might have been voting Republican, since the Civil War? I don't, they may be really dedicated to their party, as I'm dedicated to my party. Are you able to move them? Does the data suggest that you are successful when you take that strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we are polling constantly. We do membership surveys. We do focus groups with memberships or with our membership, and to really figure out what are those top line persuasive messages that will move them. Everything is data driven. Everything that we say or do is based upon some sort of research or survey that we've gotten back. The good news is we know that our membership trusts the voice of the International Union and the voice of their local union, their business manager, more so than any other media source, more so than any cable news, any podcast, no offense, or radio, or any sort of social media. So, we know that when we talk to them, that message means a little bit more. It's a bit more persuasive. They trust it. So, I think the last membership survey we did, jobs and infrastructure was the number one issue. So what President Biden has been doing really ties directly into the top lying issue that our membership cares about. So we're going to hammer that message home. We're going to continue to talk about it. And we know that if we do that consistently, we will move membership.
Yeah, so that point is reinforced by the exit polling that we see after elections. Union members, I think it's an 8 to 10% gap, vote for the candidate endorsed by their union when compared with other voters who are non-union, who are like them from their communities, have their demographic characteristics. Unions have tremendous influence with their members because first of all, they're in ongoing dialogue with them, and also their members understand that they're interested in their best interests. They're not doing it for partisan reasons. They're doing it because it's their job to represent the members, both in the workplace and in the political debate. Okay, so I want to ask an open-ended question, and then I'm going to ask you to play pundit in just a little bit. And again, I'm not looking for you to disclose any state secrets here, but and Katrina, let me start with you on this one. And this is the same question for all three of you. Tell us something about either the 2024 election or about your members in the 2024 election that's just not being talked about in the public debate right now.
Oh gosh. I would actually point to the Moms for Liberty sort of culture war and education issues that we're all reading about right now. And, Moms for Liberty has gotten a lot of airtime, but what we are seeing on the ground is, for the most part, they're losing their elections. And that is not being talked about or focused on enough. All of the news outlets want to focus on the divisive nature of Moms for Liberty and their extreme positions and them spending money on local level school board elections and all of that. But the fact is that our locals and our members have been involved in school board elections since the beginning of schools. So they know their communities, they know their schools, and when voters show up and they hear the pro-public education views of the candidates and they hear the views of these other extremists, they are by and large choosing to reject the extremists.
Can I just say that's a great answer to the question that I asked. It's also would have been a great answer to, can you tell me something that's going to make me feel better about our world? That's I feel doing this podcast was worth getting that answer. Okay, Susie, tell us something about your members and 2024 or about 2024 that's not part of the public debate right now.
Yeah, I think everyone knows, or at least people who are really into politics know that, in 2020, being that we're the tourism industry union, we were laid off at 98%. People may not have that number in their head, but that is the number in April 2020. And that's part of the reason why, we were able to go big in that election. We had folks out of work and we got them to work knocking doors, which was great. But we're still coming back from that. And I think people know we're on strike in Detroit right now. That culinary union and bartenders union have authorized a strike in Las Vegas of those 53,000 members, which may happen any moment now. And so we're really in a fight for our lives. And I think the reason that our members vote, I was listening to what Russ said, the reason our members can look past partisan labels is that our members are used to figuring out what benefits them and being very strategic, right? And they know when someone's done something for them. And we're in a circumstance right now where we're trying to win back many of the things that, quite honestly, were taken from our members during the pandemic. We didn't have to do cuts like what happened to the auto workers years ago, but we did lose daily housekeeping, automatic daily housekeeping. If people know you stay in a hotel now, your room isn't necessarily cleaned every day. That's 480,000 jobs across the country, right? Not just our jobs, but those are jobs. And so our folks are really in a fight for their lives. Our 20 cities of our hotels are up in 2024. So we're really, our folks are really having to weigh, how are they going into 2024? How much are we going to do door knocking and fight for contracts and all of that? So we're going to have to make a lot of smart decisions. And, the more I think we can get help getting our contracts done, the better we can do in these elections. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, can I just say, I'm surprised that Detroit casino strike has gone on as long as it has. I've written pretty extensively about how employers are a very important cause of the reason why we're having a strike wave around the country is they do not understand the moment. There are a lot of employers who simply don't get the moment. Hollywood maybe being the leading example of
Yes.
that. I mean, there's not a word other than stupid for the strategy that they took on.
Well,
Really something. Sorry,
and they think,
go ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
No,
I
you go
just
ahead.
think they think they can take advantage of that kind of pandemic profiteering, and they think they can just hold on to that. The room rates are higher than ever. These companies are making more than ever, and they just don't think they're going to have to share it. And I think you're right that they're wrong. That
Yeah, yeah.
they're gonna.
The concessions bargaining era is over. That's it.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
over, and they really need to change their mentality. Okay, Russ, going to give you a chance. Tell us about something about your members in 2024, or something about the 2024 election that folks are not talking about in everyday conversation or in the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, something specific about our union. Over the past 5 or 6 years, we've really put a focus on organizing. So we've been adding to our membership roles through our apprenticeship and training programs, through different recruitment efforts, knowing that as these infrastructure bills begin to roll out, as dirt starts moving, as we start building things, we're going to need more workers to build our nation's infrastructure. So we have had a major organizing effort at the United Association. We've added more members to our roles in the past 5 years than we have in a couple decades. And what we see
Wow.
with those new members, especially women and some of our younger apprentices, that's where really the enthusiasm is at for politics
Mm.
within our membership. Each year, there's a Women's Build Nations conference across the country. We always have the largest delegation of women at this conference. They are really sort of leading sort of the way when it comes to politics and our organization. So for me personally, it's great to see that enthusiasm by the young people and some of our newer members. And we're really excited about what the future holds and appreciate everything they do for our campaigns.
Yeah, that's exciting. You want to tell me where where your membership is gonna be in 5 years or 10 years? I got a prediction from a union president. I mean, you're perfectly okay. We already broke that ground. Tell us where you're gonna where are you at right now? What's the membership of UA right now? It's not
Uh,
3.2 million, but it's
no.
pretty.
We're at 372,000.
Okay, when do you get to
So
500,000?
listen, I can tell you it's going to be more than it is now. Okay, we're going to be by the next time we talk, we will have more
That's a
membership.
bailout. Nah, get
I
out of
mean,
here.
listen, I'm in politics.
That's not a real answer.
Stuff, what I would tell you is, a lot of folks say like, well, how can your union sort of move an entire election, and or your membership maybe was not with President Biden or President Trump, whatever. And I would say that in presidential battleground states, our membership really does make up that independent voter. We are your persuadable voters. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking in the Michigans, the Wisconsins, the Pennsylvanias, the Ohios, you're looking at building trades members and members of our union who really are sort of that deciding factor in flipping some of those states to President Biden. And we did it last time, and we'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, can I just say you better get to work, for goodness sakes. All right. So here it is. So here's the point where I ask you to transition from being labor political directors into almost pundits, right? So think of this as your audition for MSNBC or CNN or Fox News. This is the tape that we're going to send out to all those producers. So I'm going to ask you to each make 3 predictions.
Oof.
Okay, the first prediction, I'm going to start with you, Russ, because you haven't gone first yet. And also, I'll put you on the spot. Poor Katrina, I put her on the spot with that very, very hard question before. But so here are the 3 predictions I want you to make. First, who is going to win the 2024 presidential election? And no fair just saying my endorsed candidate. I know who your unions all endorse, but who, and you have to say why. Just a few sentences about why. Who's going to win the 2024 presidential election and why? Question number 2, which party is going to control the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House in 2020 after 2024 and why? And third, which party is likely to increase the number of governorships in 2024 and why? All right, Russ, go ahead.
Well, I think President Biden will absolutely win re-election. I think that will be based upon everything he has done for working people. As I said earlier, he promised to deliver on infrastructure. He delivered on infrastructure. And I think as soon as these jobs really start moving and people get to work or they see projects announced in their area, that will deliver victory for President Biden, especially as we look at some of the Rust Belt states where he's put a focus on. And I think, that speaks for itself. There's a clear record now. President Biden delivered, and he will win re-election. I do think we flip the House. I mean, we've seen some of the recent court rulings when it comes to
We meaning Democrats will
the
take over the
Democratic
House.
Party will take over the House because of we've seen we've had some victories when it comes to redistricting lately, and really when you look at the map, I think that it is more likely than not that Democrats will flip the House. The Senate is going to be very tough, but I think we have some great candidates, and if the Republican Party continues to nominate folks who are out of touch with working class voters and out of touch with society in general, it's going to make it easier to hang on to the Senate. But I think that one is going to be tougher than the House, and it's going to be a main focus of our own. And clearly, when it comes to governors, that's also one of our top priorities. It's from the international organization. We obviously watch the White House and both chambers of Congress, but really, when you look at governors, they're doing some of the best work in the country, and they're really delivering for our membership as well. So, we had a great success story last election. We have Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, up for election this Tuesday. Great pro-labor governor in a red state. So I think that overall, the trend is looking well for us, and as long as we do our part, I think we'll be electing pro-labor candidates across the country.
Very optimistic. Susie, President in 2024, House and Senate in 2024, governors in 2024.
I think the same as Russ, so I don't. It's I can't be different, but I'll say different reasons. I mean, I think Biden's going to win, and I think that is because I think this MAGA right wing thing, I don't think it has majority support any which way you slice it. The only way that they're able to win is when they suppress votes, and use other sort of underhanded tactics. And I think if we have our eyes on the prize and don't fall asleep at the wheel, there's no reason that Joe Biden shouldn't win the presidential election. And because he's done a lot of great things for unions, but I needed to say something a little different. In terms of the House and Senate, I agree, with Russ's assessment. I think the House is really ours for the taking. I can also say I think we might do more to try to flip the House. We usually are more involved in Senate races, and I think we've felt how rough it's been to not have the. I mean, look at where the House is, and I think we feel like that's important for us to really get involved in at a different level than we have in the past. And the Senate, I agree, it's tough, but I actually think self-inflicted wounds, like Russ said, nominating knuckleheads, that we could definitely make it happen. Governors, like our union, I think does less in general. Like certain states, we get very involved in governor races, but I have less of a kind of overall view of the governor. So I think I'll pass.
All right, Katrina, you play a big role on governor races, but let me take you through president, Senate and House, and governors.
First of all, Seth, you should know you're putting political professionals on the spot here, and we are a superstitious bunch. So everyone's going to need to go outside and turn around 3 times and spit or something. I don't know.
Salt over the shoulder works. Yes. Salt over the shoulder.
But I agree. I think President Biden has a tremendous track record. And when we remind people of all the strides that have been had and the gains that we have had across the country, I think we're going to be able to demonstrate some really good stuff to voters. And same for, U.S., the House, I think good opportunity to flip. Senate going to be harder. But, we saw in 22, a lot of the extremists came out of the Republican primaries, and that was what positioned us in a lot of places to be on better footing to win elections. And I think by and large, they're kind of doing the same thing again. So that, once we see what the full candidate slate looks like on the Republican side for Senate, we'll have a better idea. But yeah, absolutely, Governor. NEA plays very heavily in governor's races. Our members' bread and butter is state budgets, and those are determined by and large by governors and state legislatures. So North Carolina, I think we have a really good opportunity to elect Josh Stein. When you talk about running against an extremist, he is running against one of the most extreme. And then New Hampshire, with Governor Sununu saying he's not going to run again, put that definitely on the table. And I think there's a good opportunity for a gubernatorial pickup there. Such a sort of independent-minded libertarian state. I think we have a big case to make and could pick that one up too.
Yeah. Well, so let me just say, not one of you has a prayer of getting a job at Fox News. You're done. I mean, with those kinds of answers, you're never going to go to work for Fox News. MSNBC, I think they'd love to have you. So we'll send the tape along. You're all very optimistic about President Biden. I don't want to comment on President Biden for a variety of reasons. I inclined to agree with you about the House. Let me just say, I think the one way that we can be sure to win the House is to require that Republican voters identify the name of the Speaker of the House before they be allowed to vote, because 98% of them couldn't name the guy. 98% of the caucus couldn't name the guy.
It may not be him. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. It could be like Jim Jones or something like that, and everybody will know that name. So, and then in the Senate, I think you all are really optimistic about the Senate. I think Democrats have a very, very difficult challenge, with West Virginia on the ballot, Arizona, which is extremely hard to even figure out what's going to happen if Senator Sinema runs again. I'm more positive about states like Montana. I think we'll do okay there, or the Democrat will do okay there. I'm not running for anything right now except for my life. And governors, I think Katrina's got it right. I think that there are some interesting pickup opportunities for the Democrats. The loss of Governor Sununu is a big loss for Republicans. He's a voice in the Republican Party that will be missed, sort of a voice of moderation and rationality, even if you disagree with him on policy. So let me just say, I think you're all terrific pundits. And by doing such a great job on this blogcast, you're at grave risk of being invited back again so that we can assess where we are in 6 months. And definitely after Election Day, we're going to have you back and we're going to find out how your predictions turned out. But in the meantime, let me say thank you so much. What a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So wasn't that just as delicious and tasty and sweet as I told you it was going to be? Come on, political junkies. That one was for you. Thanks for hanging around. Let me just remind you, the Power at Work blog is all over social media. You can find us on Twitter, X, at Power at Work blog, Threads, at Power at Work blog, Instagram, Power at Work blog. We have pages you can follow on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Please go there and follow it. We're also on TikTok, Power at Work blog. You can find us there. If you subscribe to the blog, we'll keep you updated on the newest content that we have. We'll send you a weekly newsletter. We'll also send you the weekly download, which collects a couple of dozen great news stories, videos, academic studies, other stuff that will keep you updated on what's going on in the labor news beyond my introductions to these blogcasts. So please subscribe, follow us on social media, DM us on social media, so that you can let us know your thoughts. Let us know if there are stories we need to be covering. Let us know if there are people we need to be interviewing. Let us know if you've created some content that you would like us to share. I just posted a terrific set of videos from our friends at the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Their legal department did a bunch of terrific videos explaining recent labor law developments. Those are on the blog right now. We're happy to promote your material. It's not all about us. It's also about you, talking about worker power, collective action, and unions. So let us know. Send us a DM through any of the social media outlets. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks for having us in your home, on your computer, and for watching this blogcast. We'll see you again on the blog very soon. Thanks.